Commander, welcome home. It's been a wild ride these past few years. Here we stand, victorious in our fight against Advent, the alien invaders, and the Elders. We fought our war, and we stand strong together, triumphant. And yet, the world will never, ever be the same after this. We now walk among our former enemies. These alien invaders are now citizens among us. And now we are to coexist. And yet, the fighting has not stopped. Terrorism, all sorts of groups are now striking into the hearts of our cities, trying to take over or throw a revolution. We have to take a stand against these terrorists. And to do so, we had to formulate a new group. XCOM will live on in the form of a new coalition of human and alien together, fighting as one unit to stop these threats among us who wish to tear down everything that we've worked so hard to rebuild. Commander, we have permission to begin the initiative. Chimera Squad, roll out! Well, this was a pleasant surprise. I had no idea what the future was going to be for XCOM, but I can't say that I expected this. This is essentially Rainbow Six meets XCOM. And when I found out about it, I got pretty psyched. It's not the future I expected out of XCOM, but I'm very pleasantly surprised with it. I never expected that we would basically see a human-alien joint task force and get to pull them together in one cohesive group to be a counter-terrorism unit. I was so blown away by this that I felt like I had to play it and jump on it. And it's to the extent that, hey, I went and built a rig. I got myself a gaming PC because my old laptop couldn't handle it. And, I gotta say I'm pleasantly surprised, and I'm very excited to step into this realm of PC gaming. So, without further ado, let's dive right into this.
Fire in the hole! Here we go! Stay back!
Breach! Breach! Breach!
Follow me.
Putting the squeeze on!
Target killed.
XCOM Chimera Squad. Alright, so we have a bit of a spin-off here. A very unexpected, surprising spin-off. Now, to put things in short, if you've played XCOM before, then you're probably going to be enjoying your experience here. But understand that this is a XCOM experience with a slight twist to it. In XCOM 2, we've already saved the world from an alien invasion and put a stop to the threat against humanity. And now where do we go from there? Well, we pick up in something on a much smaller scale. A little side story where here we are in a city of humans and aliens living together, and that requires a joint task force to deal with some of the new threats that have popped up since the war has ended. Terrorist organizations, all these gangs who are trying to fight for their own reasons and own causes, and they're putting the lives of the people in this city at risk. The people of this city, that's both human and alien. It's really just about that simple, basically. The story to XCOM Chimera Squad is a little bare bones. It's just enough to kind of keep the plot going and enough for you to wrap your head on, okay, what am I doing? What is my motivation? What is my objective? And you could argue, I suppose, more or less that that's all you need. You won't exactly be seeing any old familiar faces, except for one, if you really look into it. And on another note, you'll be able to look at some lore that's kind of tucked away around in the game that references others from past games, like Central, for example. And that's more or less it. Now, let's get to the meat of the game, and that's the gameplay itself, both in combat and outside of combat. Well, it's like I said earlier, this game is like you take the XCOM formula and combine it with Rainbow Six, essentially. That's the way I look at it, is you got this coalition of human and alien, of all sorts of species and backgrounds, joined together, and they're acting as a counter-terrorism unit. So it's a lot of breach and clear type fighting when it comes to the actual combat. Every time you enter a combat situation, you're going to be thrown into a breach phase, where you get to set up everyone where you want them and how you want them. You could tell these characters go, hey, enter through this door over here, you break through the side window, and you go through the vents, and you put down the breaching charge, or you hack the door, that sort of stuff. And when you are assigning them these positions, you can have a few little interesting twists to it. You'll be able to get buffs or debuffs, and it'll tell you how dangerous the breaching position is. So you can have a, hey, when you breach through here, you are guaranteed to get a critical hit on enemies. But then over here, it's like, when you enter through this door, the last one's going to be rooted in their position and not able to move. And it lets you know the danger of that position, as in how many enemies are here, for example, how heavily armed, that sort of thing. And it does make things pretty interesting. I personally really got a kick out of it. It may wear down a bit by the end of the game, but it's still enjoyable to have this new formula like this. I like the sort of action and intensity that it winds up bringing into the game. Just understand, it's going to happen at the very beginning of every single mission in-game. And there's no telling when it's going to be good or bad, but it will pay to have that variety in who you pick in your squad for each of those possible entry points. So Torque is a Viper character who, for example, she can always enter through vents, but the other species, they need a special skin weave to be able to fit themselves into a vent. Breaching charges, you have to manually bring those along to blow open a wall when it's possible and send everyone through for a surprise attack, which most of the time it's a guaranteed buff on those situations. Or your support character, the healer, who has her little drone that can always hack any door. Or in other cases, you can just get a security card that's like a one-time use on your allies to be able to break in through that door. So there's a lot of planning just within that alone. And there's a lot of fun strategy to that approach. Now when you get into the combat itself, it's pretty much the exact same as XCOM 2 was. Not much else to say about it other than if you've played XCOM 2, you know what to expect with this game. The main difference is, in this one, every single one of these encounters is like the size of a room, more or less. It's a very much smaller area, basically, of like, hey, we're gonna clear out this floor of this building, basically. Or, hey, we're gonna clear out this little courtyard or parking lot outside. And now you move to Phase 2. Okay, so we're entering the building now. You enter through this window, you enter through the main door. Alright, let's do it. And then a final phase. Okay, we're going up to the rooftop. Let's break in through here and break in through there. Alright, everyone go. And that's more or less how it is. Generally small battlefields with pretty intense firefights going on throughout them, like non-stop. It's you versus one of these unique terrorist organizations or groups that you have to go in and fight, and they each specialize on some sort of background or some sort of type of fighting that you'll notice pretty quickly. Such as, for example, one of the groups is super focused on psionic-based characters, who all have like mind control powers and some of those abilities that you saw from a lot of sectoids in the last game. Or the Codex, for example. Ones where they control your mind, or they'll disable your gun for a few turns and you have to reload. Now, when it comes to the actual missions, There are a few different types of missions, but none of them will be too different from what you may have experienced in the previous XCOM game. And for those of you who don't know, here's more or less what it is. There's pretty much just breach and clear, eliminate all the threats in the area. We have to reach this control panel or this monitor and stop a hack or start taking data from it ourselves, for example. Or, hey, we gotta get all these hostages or get this VIP out of here now. Those type of scenarios where it's all pretty straightforward and get this one objective done. And some of the missions though, I should point out, there is a type of mission where, hey, once you complete this or grab this, you now enter a sort of evacuation phase. Where now the enemies will just continuously, never-endingly respawn from these specific points, and you gotta just evacuate your squad ASAP. Get every single one of them out of there, or else it'll pretty much more or less be a fail. Which, if you take too long, yeah, that's gonna get pretty overwhelming, so try to be kind of fast and on the move about it. And sometimes you might want to leave an extra person there near the doorway to more or less be like covering fire for someone who might be really far back in the room and has a lot of distance to cover before they can finally reach the doorway to get out of there, you know. Now, the other important part of this is realizing, okay, who am I bringing into combat with me? Well, you aren't exactly making new characters like you would in XCOM 2. You aren't customizing these characters in this game or anything. You're given a set group of people who they slowly come in as you play throughout the game, and you get to kind of choose when you get certain teammates to come in. And, you know, you send them down their set paths, more or less. They still have like 2 different branches of skills that they can level up, but generally they more or less all fall into the support unit, the grenadier, the assault type, the ranger, the sniper. Everyone more or less does fit one of these categories, just maybe with their own little unique twist or specific focus on some aspect of that class. And not to mention that, yes, we are going to be playing as some of these aliens, so if you've been curious about what it's like to be in the control of a muton, a sectoid, one of the hybrids, or even a Viper, for example, they bring very interesting twists to the gameplay, and to me they were typically the more interesting characters to wind up playing as. I enjoyed the new twists that they brought to the gameplay, and the new playstyles that came from them in particular. So it helped provide even more change. But that's not to say that these human characters didn't really make a difference either. I really enjoyed having Godmother on the team, for example. She is crazy effective in CQC range with her shotgun abilities and how she can wipe out whole groups of people right in front of her or inflict some serious damage on one particular individual. She was a major threat anytime I brought her out in the field. And I love that, for example, Torque the Viper, she can lash her tongue out to pretty impressive lengths across the map to wrap around someone, yank them in right next to her, and then she can coil around them, and once you get her upgraded, she can do some pretty severe damage. So it was amazing getting to kind of synergize all these different characters now and these new playstyles that they offer, and I loved the hell out of that. So if you play your cards right and take some of these new gadgets that you can equip to your character and some of these new abilities for the squad, you can make a seriously deadly combination of teammates and even take multiple turns if you play your cards just right with some of these abilities. And that's a satisfying feeling when everything just comes together so right like that. One other detail worth noting though about the gameplay is, I don't know if it was just me, I should mention right now, just openly, that I played this game on normal and I didn't do Iron Man difficulty. But, with that said, I didn't even ever come close to failing a mission in this game. Not once did it happen. And I think there was only one, maybe 2 instances that one of my characters got near death at 1 or 2 bars remaining. And from what I understand, they don't actually die either if their health depletes. You just gotta get them out of there, basically. Here's the thing with this game compared to the other XCOMs, is the fact that these characters, as soon as a mission's over and they're injured, they just kinda heal. you don't have to worry about just throwing them back into an infirmary or anything. At worst, what you have to worry about is occasionally if they get too severely injured, they'll be quote-unquote scarred after the mission, which will put kind of a considerable debuff on the character, but you can get rid of it very easily by putting them back into training and just essentially giving them a couple days to recover from it, and there you go. They'll be back to their normal selves, and you can throw them out on the field. And even with the scar, you can just throw them back out on the field if you really want to. And that's about all there is to it, really. Now, outside of that, what else is the other big gameplay element? Well, that's kind of what you're doing between your missions. And it's a little more scaled back this time around. Instead, all you'll be really doing is, you're still going to do sort of research and development type stuff, training, undercover missions, and then there's the main thing itself of having like an overview of the city and its separate districts, where each day you have the choice of, okay, am I going to go out on this mission? Are we going to do these little undercover jobs that just kind of pass the day by? And there's still sort of like a panic system, you know. Each section of these cities, the panic's going to rise if you just keep ignoring them, and they're going to go into the red, and whenever panic kind of breaks out, you know, the city's anarchy begins to rise, which I guess you could more or less compare to the Avatar project, and it would be a game over if you failed to contain everything. Thankfully, though, every time you do a mission in the sector, you're rewarded pretty well, and it scales back some of that panic going on. On top of that, there's these little icons at the bottom of the map screen where they give you the choices of, can I take the rewards from this mission without even doing it? Can I lower the panic over here in this district? Can I lower the overall anarchy? That sort of stuff, basically. Or freeze the panic in one other area. And that tremendously helps, you know, keep pace with everything. I don't think I ever had a moment of, like, oh boy, this is getting kind of bad. There was only a couple times I ever had a district go into the red, otherwise, I think at most my anarchy rose 2 bars and that was it. And that was really easy to recover from and reel it back to 0 with no problem whatsoever. So it's an interesting idea, but a harder difficulty to really, you know, feel the pressure from that, because I never really felt any panic or any trouble out of it. It just felt like something that was really easy to do with. Just give it a couple days and you'll bounce back from it, essentially. All this work on the map is essentially building up to, as you investigate each one of these organizations, you're kind of doing these missions to help kind of build up your intel and knowledge so you can launch an assault or a mission on some sort of counterattack to what they're doing, or launch a mission against their headquarters, you know, pull out what you need from them and find out what's really going on in the city after a tragic event has struck. Beyond that, I'll touch on the sound quality and the graphics really quick. The sound design is pretty cool. I love this sort of sci-fi feel, this atmospheric sound that all the music has, and most of the sound effects are pretty much just ripped straight from XCOM 2. They still got those alien, futuristic, high-tech weaponry noises that are just really satisfying, and every time makes impact on something and you hear the roar, hissing screech of a alien being taken down. All of it feels super satisfying, and it really helps set the mood, whether you're in your locker room, whether you're in combat or breaching phase. All of it works out excellent. And the graphics themselves, it's good, decent. It's good for what it is. I can't really complain. I think it looks nice. I love the design of the world, the city, the aesthetics. I love seeing how much work and effort went into designing, hey, here's what everything looks like all these years later, and here's how our society is now functioning together, trying to coexist. I suppose if I need to really touch on anything negative, I've already mentioned that this game seemed pretty easy. Like, I never really felt any level of threat by the end. I was a little shocked that I kind of breezed through it as much as I did. And the other thing is, it's still got kind of the standard XCOM problems. You're definitely gonna rage a few times when it says like, oh hey, you got a 97% chance to hit, and then you fail at point blank. Yeah, that still doesn't feel good. Or there's a lot of animation bugs I noticed still. Like half the time whenever they went to breach through a door, sometimes they just run straight through it, or like whenever they Torque would crawl through a vent, she wouldn't even go through the vent, she'd go through the floor next to it instead and just pop out. And sometimes, you know, they go to shoot an enemy and they're just facing the different direction altogether. So just simple stuff like that, just animation bugs, and really that's about it. I never encountered any crashes or any game-breaking bugs. Nothing along those lines, just mostly aesthetic stuff and a little bit of frustrating, you know, typical gameplay loop, RNG type stuff, just not... It feels like sometimes the RNG just screws you over, you know? Typical stuff like that. Other than that, I can't really complain. It's, at the end of the day, it's an enjoyable title that's going to mean a lot of new things now for XCOM's future and the rest of the series. And I'm looking forward to seeing what becomes of it now. Alright. And that concludes Chimera Squad. What more can I say? Wow. I'm pretty blown away by this game in all ways. There's few complaints I have, especially for the price point, considering it was $20, and it keeps regularly going on sale for only $10. There's a lot of bang for your buck for only $10. I love the idea and concept that this is where XCOM is going, and I want to see more of its future, which, hey, by the sound of the ending, yeah, we better expect more. A lot more. My only letdowns with this game is, I'm bummed that there was no character customization, and the fact that they did have these, you know, set-in-stone characters that you couldn't really create or customize much. I wanted to see more of them. If you're gonna give me set characters, then at least expand upon them and try and make them all interesting. My only knowledge of them is these little tidbits between missions where occasionally this guy and this guy will have some banter with one another. Or their personalities of a snarky comeback in the middle of combat. That's about all the character development you get. That and what you read in their biographies. What else? Sooner or later, the gameplay loop does get a little stale. They don't really introduce a whole lot that's new. And, you know, about the only other concern that I had out by the ending was, yeah, I felt like this was the easiest of all the XCOM games. Now, granted, I have to say, I wasn't doing an Iron Man run or anything like that. I was just playing it like I do the rest of the games. And yet, there was not a single instance of... No, there was only one instance of a character nearly dying. I never lost a teammate this entire game. Not once. Part of that might be attributed to some of the characters seem way more effective than some of the others. I think I tried about a little over half the characters, and yet I wound up sticking with like the same 5 or 6 the whole time. I didn't feel much reason to go to any of the others. I like these 5 or 6 characters, and they work pretty efficiently the whole game. Other than that, I mean, it's XCOM. If you like 2, if you liked Enemy Within, you're probably gonna like this. This is functions on a much smaller scale, but it's still the XCOM gameplay that you pretty much know and love. So if you're curious at all, you want to see the future of XCOM, I think it's a worthy venture, especially at a good price. You'll get plenty of hours out of it. And it's a lot of fun. It's pretty much that straightforward. So with that in the bag, let's look forward to the future of this franchise and hope for some more pretty interesting games here in the future. I hope you all enjoyed this. I hope you all give it a try. I genuinely do, and other than that, everyone take care out there, okay? Until next time.